A resurgence of the old school FPS has started to boom in recent years, to range in degrees of quality. Merely throwing on a low poly slick of paint and a few keycards doesn't necessarily mean you've captured the true magic of a 90s FPS. These games were much more than their perceived nature of kill kill kill, although there was a lot of that. Not enough mention goes to the level design and atmospheric craft of these games, both elements used to distinguish one from another. Although Blood and Duke Nukem look similar and even use the same engine, their levels and thematic distinctions create two different experiences. The same thing goes for Doom, Shadow Warrior and Quake. This is where DUSK comes in. Although it wears its influences on its sleeve, DUSK doesn't rely on pastiche to keep itself afloat. In fact, the game is vehemently interested in carving out an identity and mood of its own, leaning into its genre elements a lot more than you might expect. Occult iconography permeates the entire game, and there's a progressive sense of delving deeper and deeper into the nonsensical and otherworldly. As each level dips further and further into the Lovecraftian madness it clearly takes a thematic strand from. Not to mention the way the horror is also used to divvy up the pace of the game. There are times often where you'll be left alone in the dark with nothing but the sounds of unseen creatures and creepy handwritten messages on the walls, building dread for what's to come. The level design as a whole springs for variety and variation, which directs the ways you'll play some sections and gives a real presence to the designer curating the moment-to-moment experience of DUSK. Purposely confining you and limiting your shotgun ammo in the cutty mines is a standout example, which is in contrast to the Erebus Reactor's open floor and vertical freedom in dealing with an onslaught of enemies. DUSK understands that a core tenet of the best of old school shooter design is in letting the levels drive the types of engagements players will have, while keeping the fundamentals simple. And it's the tight grip the game has on those fundamentals that makes it all so satisfying. Movement is precise, and there's bunny hopping and strafe jumping aplenty as you make efforts to avoid projectiles and prioritise enemies. There's also an unlocked Y-axis, which allows you to front and backflip just for the hell of it. The weapons have a good heft to them too, each having a distinct role that allows you to tailor a certain tool for a particular job, such as lining multiple enemies up for piercing damage with a crossbow or crowd controlling with the mortar. In this department, the game generally evokes Quake the most. Other touches like on-screen prompts and messages are also reminiscent. There's also a dose of Half-Life in some of the exploration, with physics items and ducking into vents and other spaces to find secrets and get around. DUSK pulls enough from elsewhere to evoke familiarity, and is perhaps satisfying to dig into because you're aware of how a game like this might hide its secrets. But rather smartly, a big part of the game is how it's aware of your potential preconceptions and thus toys with these expectations, throwing its own ideas into the mix.
Take it. Taste the power.
This is especially prevalent with the later levels becoming more spatially abstract, bending the rules of navigation to really mess with your head. This again evokes that feeling of a crafty designer's presence over the whole thing, a designer who's having fun playing with these ideas. It's this sense which is key to DUSK's success. Errant Signal, in a video talking about Doom, mentioned the feeling of getting to know this scrappy group of teenage developers through the game that they'd made. The same is true of DUSK. David Szymanski's personality really shines through. Whenever the disembodied taunts of Jacob or gory messages alert you, it feels like Szymanski himself is directly involving himself with you, the player. Looking at DUSK's influences is similar to looking at how id threw a bunch of their favourite media together when making Doom. Only now, instead of a post-modern gaming mishmash of metal and 80s action flicks, DUSK operates on this entertaining, almost post-postmodern, or postmodern extra level, where those id-age games themselves are now the influence on this one. As such, it really gives an insight into Szymanski's taste in games and media, and like Doom, you really get a sense of the type of person and creator he is. It's this injection of character that prevents DUSK from feeling like just a homage, or like a factory-made recreation of what came before. It's very much within the catalogue of its genre, as its own piece of work, and given the area it's working in, DUSK should be commended for that. The same goes for the soundtrack. Andrew Holschultz's success is in the same vein as Szymanski's. The music feels entirely its own, while still being stylistically evocative of the area it's in sync with. There's a mixture of pumping metal to fuel your mouse-clicking carnage, as well as dreadfully effective atmospheric tracks that do a great job of cohering with the level design and visuals to really sell a sense of place. My personal favourite being the deep drones and echoes from the cutty mines. All in all, the music complements Dusk in achieving a tone of its own. It really can't be stressed enough how impressive it is for the game to not drown in pastiche. It would have been an easy hole to fall into, but having its own ideas, themes and look is what elevates the game above its surface. This, alongside its grip on the fundamentals of 90s FPS design, is what places Dusk alongside those classics of the genre, rather than just leaving it as a simple imitation or a game that only looks back.